Welcome to tonight's episode of Valley Veterans Forum. Tonight, my guest is Jesse Fabela, a Vietnam veteran, decorated holder of the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star, and a local resident of the Valley. Jesse, before we get started talking about your Vietnam experience, why don't you tell us a little bit about your early life?
Steve, thank you for having me here, and I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Well, I was born in Fresno. As soon as I was able to, my mom took me to Selma, where I was raised, and I went to school in Selma. Graduated Selma High School. Worked out in the fields. I was a farm worker for many years, and until I got drafted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now that we are into your Army life, let's look at some of the pictures that you had shared with me when we met the other day.
Okay.
This is an early picture of you, probably, what, right before basic training or
no,
right after?
This was on my way to Vietnam. My mother wanted me to take this picture and several others to have something to remember me by in case I didn't come home. Those are my three older brothers. Two of them have passed away. They were Korean War veterans. The youngest one on the right, he was 17 at the time he took that picture. I have 6 brothers, 7 altogether. We've all been in the military.
Okay, these are some of your decorations.
Yeah, these are some of the decorations. The most important one up there is my combat infantry badge. The other ones are, I thank them for it, but the patches are different units I served in. And, I had this made up for my kids so they could have something to remember me by.
Well, good. And your Purple Heart is up there.
Yes.
Some of the others are units. Okay, now
Yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about this picture that you made?
This picture here, I used to be an art major at Fresno State when I got back from Vietnam, and so I used to draw quite a bit, and I saw this picture and I thought I'd put it down, and I kind of liked the way it was structured. These things here are my dog tags and my P38. They say it takes 38 turns to open a can. And my rosary, that's the original rosary I wore in Vietnam the whole time I was there.
Well, you and I are both, as we found out, you and I are both Catholics, and
Yes.
One of the things I learned from being in Vietnam is that, as the old saying goes, there are no atheists in foxholes.
Yes.
And
that's very true.
we kind of learned that not only is there luck in this world, but there's also a lot of hopefulness. And why don't you tell us about this picture?
This is when I was made an honorary member of the Legion of Valor. The person presenting it to me is Phil Conran. He's a distinguished, he's an Air Force Cross recipient. And the other person there is Bob Speck. He's the director of the museum. So they had a ceremony there, and they presented us with those certificates.
Well, we met each other at the museum when I was making the museum piece that we'll be showing, and you're a docent there. So why don't we move into and look at that museum video that we just produced and share with the rest of the people out there a look at the museum and what goes on down there.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. In August 1991, the Legion of Valor established the Legion of Valor Veterans Museum. Located at 2425 Fresno Street in downtown Fresno, the museum itself is housed within the Fresno Memorial Auditorium. The auditorium building, built and dedicated in 1936, has been placed on the National Register of Historic Places. The foyer is a grand space with a 26-foot high ceiling. The foyer walls and ceilings are decorated with Art Deco murals. Among the major Art Deco elements are the large bronze light fixtures mounted on the columns. The Fresno Memorial Auditorium was, from 1936 to 1966, Fresno's most significant cultural facility. The building's Art Deco exterior was outstanding for its time. Over the years, events held in the auditorium included Broadway plays and musicals, concerts, operas, ballets, and conventions. Performers appearing there over the years included notables such as Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, Ricky Nelson, and many, many others. The completion in 1966 of a new convention center complex located in downtown Fresno led to several changes in the use of the Fresno Memorial Auditorium. In 1992, the city officially renamed the building the Fresno Veterans Memorial Auditorium and the National Legion of Valor Museum within it. Staffed by volunteers and supported in part by the city of Fresno, the museum houses thousands of items and papers donated by Legion of Valor members and others. It contains an outstanding collection of military equipment and memorabilia. Numerous framed citations, photographs, and exhibits tell the story of America's wars as seen by individual soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen. Special tribute is paid to those who have received the four highest military honors: the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Navy Cross, and the Air Force Cross. The Legion of Valor itself has even deeper roots in history. Formed as the Medal of Honor Legion in April of 1890, its original members were composed of Civil War and Indian War campaign veterans who were recipients of the Medal of Honor. With the passing of years and the demise of original members, the membership dwindled. On November 25, 1918, recipients of the Army Distinguished Service Cross were admitted. In 1933, members of the United States Navy and Marine Corps who had received the Navy Cross were included. On August 4, 1955, Public Law 224 of the 84th Congress incorporated the Army and Navy Legion of Valor of the United States. Recipients of the Air Force Medal of Honor and the Air Force Cross became members on June 21, 1961. Each of the three services has its own distinctive design for the Medal of Honor and the three crosses. The Medal of Honor is awarded for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life, above and beyond the call of duty. The three crosses are awarded for extraordinary heroism. Many of these two highest decorations are awarded posthumously.
This is the entrance to the Veterans Memorial Museum in Fresno, California, home of the Legion of Valor. This is where you can start in here. You can go in any direction. It's circular. You can't get lost. Start off here. Most of the items in here are in a chronological grouping. So as an example, this case here, those four cases, and that wall is all memorabilia from World War I. Most everything in here is labeled so you can walk along, look at the item, read the description, tell you what it is. The real historical value is to be reading all these things. It's a history lesson in itself. If you can get in here and take a look at that, that's kind of an interesting little item from World War II. That young man was carrying his little Bible in his left shirt pocket, or his right shirt pocket, I guess, and he was hit by a piece of artillery shrapnel. So his Bible basically saved his life. So there's the shrapnel right there, which went into his Bible and not through his lung. This is one of our really prized exhibits. It was donated to us by the city of Fresno, or the county of Fresno. It's a Gatling gun. It was manufactured in 1902, I believe, for the United States Navy by Colt Firearms. It weighs 266 pounds, not exactly a lightweight weapon. This room over here is dedicated to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 1941. All of the memorabilia in here basically relates to that attack, plus the film that's playing is about Pearl Harbor. I'd like to, for a particular reason, I'd like to point out to you one specific item here. Or a group of items, I guess. These items right along here, there's a card that will tell you what they are. You see there's a naval officer's sword. It's a picture of the USS Nevada at Pearl Harbor on December 7th. This is an ensign shoulder boards, and these are 2 pieces of shrapnel. These donations were made to us by Robert E. Thomas, who was a young ensign on the Nevada on December 7th. And those 2 pieces of shrapnel laid him up in the hospital for about 13 months. I'm pointing that out to you for a particular reason, because we have another display that he was kind enough to give us a year or so ago that we'll get to a little bit later. This area of museum down here is mostly dedicated to the Vietnam War. There's a lot of artifacts and maps and photographs of that era. This area over here, all these uniforms along this side of the wall were donated to us by members of the Legion of Valor. Just for your background information, the Legion of Valor is an organization that was formed in 1891, and it was comprised of people who had been awarded the Medal of Honor. At that point in time, they were all Civil War or Indian War veterans. Subsequently, in 1921, the organization extended its membership to people who had been awarded the Distinguished Service Cross and the Navy Cross. And then later on, with the development of the defense establishment, when the Air Force became an independent unit, they were included, so you can be invited to join if you hold a Medal of Honor or any one of the service crosses. Other than these, most everything in here was donated to us by local veterans, which is very interesting. We try and keep these things current. Like this is an interesting story here about Abe Baum. As a follow-up on this was printed in World War II magazine about 2 years ago. And as a matter of fact, it was printed just about 2 months before Abe Baum passed away. But there's a lot of interesting historical stories involved if you take the time to read them. This section in here is a covered display case of aircraft. The far side is all World War II vintage aircraft. This side is all aircraft post-World War II, mainly jets. Would call your attention to the uniforms that are hung around all the walls. Those, again, were all donations to us by local veterans, mostly local veterans. Particular interest is this naval uniform right here. We're not sure who gave that to us or when, but we determined that, to the best of our knowledge, it was Commander David McCampbell, who was the United States Navy's top ace in World War II with 34 aerial victories over the Japanese. And we made that determination looking at the ribbon array on the uniform. This is one of only 2 U.S. Navy aviators that had been awarded both the Navy Cross and a Medal of Honor. Many of the stories about the war for both the military and civilian side are in the cases, and again, you have to read the cards, they're all there, but there's interesting series here about rationing, which is an interesting story in itself. I get an kind of interesting story about this right here. My doctor's sister is an Army doctor, and she has commented to him from her service in Afghanistan that all these American soldiers are kids, they're children. I get a chuckle out of looking at this photograph here, this little group right here. There's a photograph here of 2 Air Force pilots. One of them here is Brigadier General Chuck Yeager, who you'd probably recognize. The other is one of the 8th Air Force's top fighter aces, Bud Anderson. If you take a good look at that picture, he appears to be about 12 years old. And yet he's the top fighter ace in the 8th Air Force. This room over here is a display of small arms, rifles and pistols of the military. One of my favorites to show off to visitors is this gun right here. It's called the Liberator. It's a piece of trash. We turned out thousands upon thousands of them during the war for $1.50 each. And it was considered a gun to get a gun with. We dropped these into occupied territories. Members of the resistance could then use that to kill an enemy soldier and take his gun. It's interesting in that the operating instructions for the pistol here are on this card over here, and they're done in drawings, because when the gun was manufactured, nobody knew where it was going. The vast majority of them were dropped into Japanese-occupied China, but we also dropped them into France, Holland, Belgium, most of the European countries. One of those, I understand, one of those about 2 years ago, just as you see it there with the box, the instructions, the gun, the ammunition, and the dowel, was sold at an auction for $9,000. Not bad for a $1.50 investment. Might take a notice here. There are about 6 cases here in the museum that are Nazi German militaria. There's 3 of them right there. These were donated to us by this gentleman here, Paul Schultz. It was his private collection, and it's very extensive and very complete. I find this display kind of interesting. This is a slideshow of photographs taken at Hammer Field. In case you weren't in Fresno in 1941, Hammer Field was built then by the U.S. Army Air Corps. Today, it's more commonly known as Fresno Yosemite International Airport. We put this display up with the slideshow inside some windows. These windows were from the last 1941 vintage building that was demolished last summer. And the contractor doing the demolition gave us some of the windows so that we could build this display. So you could look at the photographs of Hammer Field through the windows, just as thousands of servicemen did in the 1940s. Photographs on the wall over there are local guys who were prisoners of war. And that binder over there has their biographies in it. And if you take the time to look that over, you might even recognize some names. Jerry Eckenrod up here was one of the founders of this museum. Over here's Judge Frank J. Creed, who retired from the Superior Court in Fresno. This section in here in this room, all of these pictures up here on these walls are living members of the Legion of Valor. We have display cases here, memorabilia from the Korean War. And then in these cases here is memorabilia from Iraq, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, more contemporary things. Right over there to your right is our collection of Civil War memorabilia. This is our display here commemorating the Doolittle raid on Japan of April 18th, 1942. Including a Doolittle uniform that his daughter donated to us. That's Hollywood Goes to War, and there's pictures and brief biographies of Hollywood actors, movie stars that served in World War II. Some of them were movie stars before the war, such as Clark Gable, Tyrone Power, Jimmy Stewart. Others became movie stars after the war, such as Paul Newman. But if you get hooked on that, that's good for about 45 minutes. In 1980, Steven Spielberg made a film called The Mission, and that is a prop that was constructed for and photographed in that movie. Fairly extensive size model of naval vessels from World War II. The major one being the USS Missouri, which is about 10 feet long. That photograph at the end of the display is a Navy Chief Petty Officer who lived out in Coalinga, and he made these ships as his hobby. And my understanding is he called up one day and asked us if we'd like to have his model ships. That's a kind of a brief tour, I understand, but you can take the time to look at all the items and read the cards, the definitions, and the stories behind them. You can have quite an education and spend several hours at it.
Here with us today is a member and docent. And sir, tell us your name.
My name is Jesse Fabela.
Yes, Mr. Fabela, pardon me. I would like to ask you how you became involved with the museum.
Well, what happened was I was at home doing nothing after I retired. Pretty much spending my time in my room by myself. And my wife suggested that I come down here to kind of get me out of the house. And she realized that I love the military. So she said, why don't you go down there and volunteer? And I came down here, volunteered, and the guys took me in like I was a long-lost child. Even the old World War II veterans, they became my best friends. So I kind of feel like this is therapy for me, because it helps me, talk about things and with people that really know what happened.
The museum is open from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Admission is free to the public. The museum is conveniently located in downtown Fresno Street, across from the historic Fresno Water Tower. It's an easy walk from most of the downtown Fresno hotels. Fresno Transit buses will take you there from most parts of the city, and parking is available at the site. Come visit the Veterans Memorial Museum. You'll be surprised and amazed at its treasure trove of military memorabilia. Learn more about our military past and honor those whose gallantry and sacrifices are represented through the exhibits at the museum. A gift shop is located near the museum's entrance, offering badges, caps, pins, and military chevrons, along with other war period related items. Viewers, hope you enjoyed this documentary. Now, Jesse, why don't you tell us more about your personal experiences in Vietnam and afterwards?
Okay, well, what happened was I was going to college. I quit. I got drafted. I did my basic training in Fort Lewis, Washington. I did my advanced infantry training there as well. After a 21-day leave, I got my orders to go to Vietnam. It was Friday the 13th,
Well,
December the 13th.
that was prophetic.
So that was kind of, I was thinking, wow, that's not good. So after that, I went to the 90th Replacement Company in Long Binh, and there I was assigned to the 199th Light Infantry Brigade. I was in B Company, 5th Battalion, 12th Infantry Regiment.
Now, that was in I Corps, as they called it.
No,
No?
this is 3 Corps.
3 Corps.
3
Okay.
Corps. This is our main mission was to protect Saigon.
Okay.
Okay, so we were right there by the rubber plantations. We were by rice paddies. There was mountains. There was swamps and stuff. The Iron Triangle was close by
This
too.
is the Tay Ninh province?
Not Tay Ninh.
No.
This is Long Can.
Long Can. Okay.
Long Can province. So I spent my first 3 months as a point man because the day I got out in the field, they put me on point because it's a kind of a sink or swim kind of thing. And the guy that was on point already wanted to move back in the column, so whoever came in new as a replacement would take his place.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So I was afraid I was going to die every day for 3 months, right? And when the machine gunner rotated home, they asked who wants to carry the machine gun. So I said, I'll do it, because I was tired of being on point.
Okay.
And I carried a machine gun for 6 months. It was an M60 machine gun, 30 caliber. I had to carry 200 rounds, plus I had to carry all my own personal stuff. You're talking about 80 pounds.
Yeah.
All together, I weighed 130.
Oh, boy. 130 plus 80
Yeah. So
put you over 200 pounds.
yeah. So then I was wounded on April the 4th, which was Good Friday.
Oh, boy.
I spent
Again, prophetic.
Yes, I spent Easter Sunday in the hospital. I was in the hospital for 7 days, convalescent hospital for 21 days in Cam Bay. The way this happened was that my machine gun was out of commission, so that made me a rifleman. The point man, the regular point man, asked me if I would do the point for him. So I told him sure, because I had done it before. While as we were walking through some elephant grass, my pace was such that I stepped over a booby trap hand grenade, and he came along and stepped on and blew us both up. Now,
Oh, boy.
Call it providence, destiny, I don't know what, but we had switched positions, so I should have been where he was at. And he got wounded very badly. He got sent home, as a matter of fact. But yeah, we had one guy killed in the morning on that day on Good Friday, and about 17 others wounded.
Oh boy.
So we had my whole company was in Third Field Hospital, trying to recover.
How long were you in the hospital?
7 days.
Just 7 days, and when you were recovered,
Back out to the field.
back out in the field, which
They
was
sent
the
me to,
typical of
21 days convalescent hospital.
20. It was typical of those days, as I recall.
The doctor there said he could keep me for another week if I wanted to, which would be another week out of the field. But when you do something like that, there's somebody taking your place, and I didn't want to have that on me. So I just told him, no, just send me back out to the field. So I went back out.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a lot of search and destroy, cordon and searches. We did recon, what's called RIFs, recon and force. We did, we guarded bridges. We did ambushes every day practically, and all night sometimes. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Because when we would get a time off, like a stand down for 2 days, we'd go back into the main base, and they'd take all our weapons away from us. They didn't want anybody to get crazy, and lock them up, and then we would go to the EM club and get drunk, and you know, just have a great time and all that other. That was the good times.
Kind of an in-country R&R.
Kind of, and that was kind of the good times. The bad time was, you know, all the things that happened afterwards. We would have a priest and the cooks come out to the field to our main little fire support camp, and they would bring us a hot meal, and the priest would give us general absolution, and we did that twice while I was there. And both times it was like the condemned man getting his last meal and get to talk to the minister. And sure enough, when we got out to where we were going, it was hellish. It was really bad. We had to carry our own dead out because the helicopters could not pick them up because of the RPGs and all that stuff. We carried around our dead for like 3 days. And it was, you know, I often think, I don't know how I managed to do all that. But when you haven't got any choice, you know, you can only get so wet, you can only get so hot, you can only, you know, you just throw that all out of your mind. Mm-hmm. You just go out there, do your job as best you can. You know, and like I told you before, when you're in combat, it's not so much all these ideals that you're fighting for yourself and your comrades so you can go home. You know, yes. That's what it's all about.
The common expression of today, "I've got your back," is what it's all about in the military.
For sure, you know, and you know, what I don't understand is where all these myths come from about, you know, that we soldiers were a bunch of drug addicts and we were pot smokers, and that did happen, but it never happened when we were out in the field. That just was not tolerated.
Yeah.
We had to have all your senses.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but that year, I remember thinking about it because I was a farm worker. Mm-hmm. It was how I spent my summer vacation in 1969, where I didn't have to work in the fields.
Well, you told me you're writing a book about that.
I am.
Just titled just that way.
That's what the title of it is, yeah.
Okay.
I'm working on it. It's kind of a long process because it's hard to get the chronology correct.
Okay.
You know, I can remember everything, but I just can't remember what came first.
And I don't really think that's important. The bottom line is you know the time frame it happened in.
Yes.
The chronology isn't necessarily as important. You brought along a little souvenir. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that,
okay,
that flag?
This is an ARVN flag, South Vietnamese flag. Mm-hmm. Does no longer exist because it's all one Vietnam now. But I found this...
ARVN being the Republic of Vietnam.
Right, yeah.
Army of the Republic of Vietnam.
Right. And this particular flag had been captured by the Viet Cong or the NVA, I don't know who, but I found it in a bombed out bunker complex, so I liberated it from there and I brought it home. As you can see, it's tattered and
Yeah.
faded. And
Somewhat
but-
worse for the wear, but it's almost 50 years old.
Yes,
as you
yes,
say.
and,
So, and it,
you know, I just thought that I wanted to have something like that because this is what we're fighting for, is to help this nation stay free, but things didn't work out.
well, things didn't work out in Vietnam. Certainly, many of us who were there wonder about if the political overtones had changed in the country and there was more support for our efforts, but that was not the case. It was a lot of negative sentiment. You and I both know that when we came home towards Vietnam, so we wanted to kind of put it behind us. Now, talking about that, we did. We got into civilian life, so why don't you now tell me a little bit about your post-Vietnam
Okay,
experiences?
well, when I got back from Vietnam, I went straight back out into the fields, working, picking peaches and grapes and stuff with my dad. He was a farm worker. And so after that, they opened up the IRS down here in Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
I applied for a job, and I got a job there in '72.
Mm-hmm.
Was married in '72. Worked at the IRS for 7 years. Took the test for the post office. Passed that test. I got a job in Madera.
Mm-hmm.
I was a city carrier, mail carrier. Worked there for 24 years.
24.
Till I retired at the age of 55. But I actually had 33 years in total government service,
Uh-huh.
because I bought back 2 years of my service time. So, you know, I couldn't work there anymore. It was just getting too, I don't know, it was just really getting outrageous, the stuff they wanted us to do in less time, and I had to get out of there.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, so after that, well, you know, I've been retired since I was 55. I'm 66 right now. And I volunteered down there at the Veterans Museum, Veterans Memorial Museum, because I was spending a lot of time just in my room thinking about stuff. I think about Vietnam every day. People ask me, well, why do you do that? And it's not a matter of, it's nothing I can do about it. It's just there all the time. So my wife said, you know, you need to go down there, maybe you can, you know, it would help you. So I went down there, and I had a bad experience with some World War II veterans in Madera at the VFW. And I didn't feel like really being around World War II veterans, but the veterans down there at the museum, I guess this was, I don't know, maybe 5 years later.
Mm-hmm.
They took me in like a long lost boy. And they were like my best friends.
Yeah.
I told them, I said, you know, you guys are my heroes. I used to watch you guys on the movies all the time. And I got to be real good friends with a bunch of them, and two of my very best friends passed away this year,
Yeah.
along with two of my brothers who passed away as well. So,
Well, as we've learned, or as I've learned anyway, that your military brothers become just like your real brothers in some senses. I've gone to a couple of reunions of my old outfit, and I know you've had some experience in that regard too, but I venture to say that one of the reasons you caught on with the people down at the museum is because of the shared experience aspect of being in the military.
that was it, you know, and especially with the combat infantrymen that were there. They have combat infantry badges.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a fellowship, a brotherhood. Different wars, but they're all the same, just a different time, different place.
Exactly.
So we got along great because we knew what we had gone through. You know, I was in Desert Storm
Why don't you
at
tell
the
us
age
about
of 42.
that? Yeah.
Well,
How did that happen?
I kind of got drafted into it again. So I went as an augmentee, which meant that I went with not my own unit. I was in the reserve.
You were in the reserves.
Yes,
Okay.
the transportation company. And I went with a transportation company from Phoenix because they didn't have enough people in their unit. So some people from Las Vegas and LA made up, and people from Fresno, there was 12 of us went out of a company of 180 here in Fresno.
Is this in the Guard, the Army Guard?
That's the Army Reserve.
Army Reserves, okay.
So we ended up going over there and we did our time there. It was 6 months. Never fired a shot. I came home and we all came home as a unit. When I went to Vietnam, I went by myself,
Right.
and I came home by myself because I was a replacement.
Exactly.
So when we got into Bangor, Maine, they had 3,000 or 4,000 people there meeting all of the planes that were coming in, hugging you, kissing you, putting ribbons on you, telling you what a great hero you were, and stuff like that. And I kind of thought, why didn't this happen before? You know, I didn't feel like I had done anything really, but I'm glad that the veterans are now being treated with respect like they should have been all along.
Yes, and I agree with you. We're seeing that not only through the general populace and the civilians. That's why I like to wear my Vietnam veteran cap when I go shopping at Walmart, because every once in a while somebody come up to me and thank me for my service, which is really a heartwarming thing to hear.
Yeah.
The other thing is that there's more, the world is becoming more enlightened about the military experience and the toll it takes on its families. We know
Yeah.
about PTSD. We know about military suicides.
Right.
And we also know now that the military, statistically, probably is only 1 or 2% of the overall population.
Right.
So we are a definite minority in our own right that needs to be considered for our needs.
Yeah, you know, I see that it's all volunteer Army now. And a lot of the people that are volunteering are people that can't afford to go to college because they're poor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of, that kind of makes it rough, you know, when you think of only 1% or 2% of the eligible men are going, and women are going into the military, but basically they're going in there for educational money.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I went through college.
Yeah, well, I went to college too, but
Well, but I mean, the GI Bill was affected a real big change in my life, allowed me to go to college. And we all know that having a college degree can give you a head start on a career.
Exactly.
And you know, making a nice income, etc. Well, Jesse, I want to thank you for coming in and spending your time with us on the show, telling us your story about your Army life. And I would like to welcome all of our viewers to come back for the next episode of Valley Veterans Forum here at CMAC. And again, thank you for visiting this show tonight, and keep us in mind for future episodes of Valley Veterans Forum.